So that's pretty much it in a nutshell. So now taking care of your log is pretty easy. It's a living organism. You still have to remember that if you haven't had rain for several weeks and it's up off the ground on anything, bricks or on a pallet or anything, it needs a little bit of water because it's a living thing. If you just forget about it and it dries out, it's going to die. So what I suggest for folks is to actually lay it directly on the ground so it has some contact with the ground, and then it'll tend to drop a little bit of moisture from the ground even if it's pretty dry. It's not a real good idea to keep it on mulch because mulch itself will have other fungi in it. So if you just have it on bare dirt, then it can just drop a little bit of water. So we put a bunch of these just straight. I've got a big line of bamboo in the back of the property. Just lay them on the ground right in front of it so it's shady, but it still gets water hitting it. You can put it on the north face of a house, but you have to remember, don't put it too far under an overhang so that the roof protects it from ever getting hit by water. You want it to get wet. So that's kind of an important thing. It's basically, it's moisture, but then there's also the occasional critter problems, like squirrels like to eat mushrooms, they're tasty. So you might need a little chicken wire hoop kind of thing over it to protect them. And so just from a longevity standpoint, again, this log, for about every 3/4 to an inch of wood that you get, you'll get a year of mushrooms out of the log. So this bigger one here could be around for 5 years making mushrooms. This one might be around for 3 or 4. This size of an oyster log, because it's a softer wood, might break down in 2 seasons, maybe 3, but they'll make a lot of mushrooms. The volume produced is pretty impressive. And again, there's lots of different kinds of mushrooms, oysters and shiitakes, so you can get one of a couple of different kinds and have to harvest over a longer window of time. So somebody must have some curiosity questions. Anybody want to fire away anything?
Yes. So you'll know when the wood is rotting, basically. It's just...
When the bark starts to slip off, it's going to be really apparent that, okay, the log is kind of like in its last stages of, you might get 1 or 2 more rounds of mushrooms out of it. But the oak itself, just because it's a much more durable wood, it'll last a lot longer. And again, if you keep the holes sealed up, you get a lot more time out of it. So, you got a question, too?
So each species has a different season? So just once per year you would get this kind of shiitake, and then...
If you leave it up to Mother Nature, if you're completely lazy and you never touch the logs ever, it will have its own season or window, and maybe a couple. But as the doggy back there, she basically, it's called soaking. You force it. So you make the log think that there was a lengthy rain event. You basically put the log in water in a bucket, and you let it soak up water for 24 hours or something. If a 5-gallon bucket, actually, I usually don't do this as a demo purpose, but I have it. So if you just get a log, and you stick it in a bucket, it would have mushrooms on it at that point, of course. Let it soak for about 12 hours that side, flip it over, do the other half. It's called forcing. What it makes the log think is it just experienced the rain event. And now it can fruit because it thinks the environment will be wet. In the
but independent from whatever season of the year?
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter?
Yeah. So you can basically stick it in water.
But it's too cold? Maybe not.
With certain exceptions. If you haven't watered it and it may be dead, it may have dried out too much, it may not work. It's a living thing. Mm-hmm. So if you neglect it to the point where it dies, you're not bringing it back.
And if it's too cold outside?
Too cold just simply means that when the proper temperatures have returned, it will return to the fruiting range of temperatures and it'll fruit again. So you can't do it in the middle of January and expect it to make mushrooms if that's not its normal season. Like there's different temperature ranges for the different kinds of mushrooms. Mm-hmm. So you can look them up. That's why I label everything, so we can go back to the catalog and reference its preferred fruiting ranges of temperatures. Literally, I think there's maybe like a 6 to 8 week window in the dead middle of the winter, all year round, every other time. And there can be mushrooms from different varieties.
Okay, good.
So, it's pretty cool stuff. Any other questions? Anybody? Fire away.
If I like to have another, let's say, in a plate, you can use this from one of these, but if I don't like to buy another box.
It depends. You can, in theory, start from a mushroom using its spores, something, but you need to make sure that's what's in the log and not something else. Like, you can literally die if you eat mushrooms that you don't know what they are. And so I've just found it for the $20 for the bag of starter or whatever it costs online. it's not worth the chance.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's more secure that
I have peace of mind because I buy this thing from a reputable supplier that does nothing but start mushrooms, and they tell me that this thing passes their test of, it is this particular thing and it is safe to eat. And it's roulette if you try and start things yourself, because you really don't know if spores floating in the air from God knows what are what started in your log, versus, I buy this particular bag of thing and I know this is safe, and when the thing, it's supposed to look like that, it does, I'm good. So if you study mushrooms and you become really good at identification, and you want to put a lot of energy into the sterile conditions required to do that, you certainly can do that, but I don't have the time or a lab or a sterile place to do it, and so I just found it way easier to spend $25, get a bag of starter, drill a bunch of holes, put it in the logs, and then I'm done, and it's safe and quick and easy. So the bigger challenge a lot of folks have is where do you get your logs from? Because I'm a tree service. Where are you going to get your wood from? That's the bigger hurdle you have to figure out. And so sometimes I'll tell people, if you want to grow your own mushrooms, let me know. I can cut you some logs, I can seal them for you, and then the dowels, the little wooden pegs, are easier for people to get more varieties and do it themselves. I'm a little crazy, I don't make money doing it, but I just like to help. It's a fun little project to help people grow their own mushrooms. And so I'll give people a couple of logs so they can get 4 or 5 and start and do some. It's a fun little play project, especially for little people. But I see you're a big little people, so that's cool. But if you want to try stuff like that, I'll give you a business card if you want to get some logs and try a couple yourself. I will. I love to help people with stuff like this. I don't make money doing a lot of what I do, just sharing knowledge and information. But I don't really care because it's fun and it's a passion. I was a web developer for 10 years, and it was fun enough, but I enjoy helping people grow a good bit of what they eat. And so I like to talk and I like to show how, and so it just kind of works. So everything's not about making money, a lot of it's about having fun. So, yeah.
No, the dowels are just to push.
It's a little wooden peg
Yeah.
that basically they dump a whole bunch in a sterile chamber, and then they put a little bit of mycelium in it, and then it spreads around the little wooden dowel, and then you come along, you drill holes with your drill bit, you pound it into the hole, and you seal it with wax, just like we did with the
dowel stays in there.
The dowel stays in there, it gets waxed over, and then from that dowel, it spreads into the log. Yeah. So, that's that. Anybody else? Any questions? You've had a lot. Give me another one. Yeah.
Harvest it.
How do you harvest it?
Okay, but
Should I be sarcastic or should I?
gently.
Best thing to do, there's a little bit of a science to it, but not a whole lot. If I were to just rip this off, I'd make a hole in the log. So the best thing to do is just get a knife and just kind of cut it flat. And then in this case, because they're a little bit dried, I put them in water to kind of rehydrate them. Have you ever bought dried mushrooms? Yeah. So it's the same thing. If it's not really, really fresh or it's hot and dry like it is now, you can stick it in water, it kind of rehydrates it, brings it back to its full, fresh plump. I'm ready to cut up and eat. Whatever, yeah. There's so many things, but so often it's just with a little bit of olive oil and just a quick little light stir fry and mix it with some veggies, and you just get that awesome fresh flavor.
Making me so hungry.
So, question.
I think I know the answer to this, but just as an alternative to wax, I took a class many years ago where we went through exactly what you've done here. We sealed them with these little foamy buttons.
You can buy them, yeah. It's basically, I think it's actually the sawdust and a little cap all in one, if I recall correctly. So you can do that. I'll offer you this. This will adhere a whole lot better. Right. And critters tend to pluck those little plugs out super easy. Although frankly, I've had problems even with woodpeckers just coming along. So I try and keep them tarped with a shade cloth to keep critters from having direct access to them. And squirrels love mushrooms. Plenty of winter day, I see a squirrel hauling up a tree with a mushroom and it's going, grrr. What's that? Believe it or not, not really. Dense shade is good. Canopy of trees underneath that, dense, dark, whatever, it's all good, yeah. So not a whole lot.
Well, and I'm thinking that might be what's gone on with mine. They get a little bit of light, and I think that maybe that's...
A little bit of light isn't so bad. It's just these are getting a little more light than I'd like. You get less harvest. They don't fruit as much. Because I threw a couple in my neighbor's yard, in the densest shade imaginable, and I have a picture on my website. It's obscene. Every single hole, Yeah, so the shadier and darker and the moister, the better. So, anybody else, any questions?
You said that's shiitake, right? That's an oak?
Yes, white oak in that particular case.
Is like my talking
That's also an oak. The interesting thing with that one, that's also called Hen of the Woods, it typically will go on a live tree around the base. And I've had great trouble actually getting any to start off of like logs. However, you can take fruit, a piece of the mushroom from one, and actually stick it at the base of another live tree, and the spores drop, and the cycle works naturally. I have seeded almost every oak in my neighborhood with that, and so I run around collecting trash bags with my talking when I fruit in the late fall, and it's super tasty, love those.
So I have an oak tree, so you're saying just dump some?
Well, you have to get a piece of the existing mushroom from someone, me, take my card, and then basically break it up around the perimeter of the tree, and then it might take 1 or 2 seasons, but I'm getting surprisingly good fruiting after I've done that. Like every tree doesn't have always, because it has to have some, it's a parasite in fact.
The tree sort of needs to be dying though, right?
Not really, no. It's one of the, it's a symbiotic one, it doesn't take alpha host. It goes for many, many years at the base of the tree, while the tree is alive.
So you can do it while the tree is actually planted?
Yeah.
Oh,
and the Hen of the Woods one, it's like a great big clump, and there'll be several of them scattered on the tree, and when they start fruiting her, that's a big smile on her face.
What? It's a tasty mushroom.
It's like you get so much, it's unbelievable. So there's just like literally like you can fill a trash bag from around one tree. So, I mean, we get like, it's a chain. And then Chicken of the Woods is the same thing. I mean, it's a big mushroom. It's like giant shelf mushroom, like huge, many layers, fun stuff. Yeah, there's a lot of mushrooms, some are called lion's mane. It tastes sort of like a seafoody taste. It's really, really tasty. But if you start getting into it, there's a mushroom club available to go and get information from to help ID things. And I'm not a member of pretty much any club. I just did trial by fire. I just teach myself out. But if folks are a little bit more cautious, as they probably should be, you can identify shiitakes and oysters. And it's pretty easy. You don't need to know every mushroom out there. One day little affair to a mushroom club, you can learn all you need to know and go about and collect and be safe at it. Like I jokingly call them LBMs, but little brown mushrooms at random. You see, you just don't eat them. There are certain ones like the Hen of the Woods. You've seen it. It's a very unique shape and look to it. Chicken of the Woods is like a giant orange mushroom. It's another one that's really it's unmistakable. And the important thing is there can't be any lookalikes. So if there's something that looks similar to something and you're not quite sure, that's where you run into trouble. Like shiitake, there's like nothing close to it. And Hen of the Woods and Chicken of the Woods, it's like they're just really super unique. So there's certain ones that you're just almost always safe on. That's the ones I tell folks, try and stick with that kind of thing and just avoid the rest that you're just not quite sure about.
What is the best moment to put in the jar?
You can, there's a couple of general ways to basically take a log home and grow it. You can scrape the wax off one end, dig a hole in the ground, literally stand it up. It's called a totem nest. So you're growing it like a totem pole, and then the mushrooms just come off to the side. So that's really good in that the water from the soil basically absorbs straight up from the bottom, and it's not quite as dependent upon rain. If you were to imagine this were the ground and you just lay them straight on it, that's as simple as you can imagine. That works fine. So just stick them in lines, spread them apart a little bit so you can kick in between. And you have an area no bigger than this table with 8 varieties in the shade, under a tree somewhere, and everything's close together to cover, so you don't have a big area to try and protect from critters. So, yeah, I mean, I literally set up mushroom gardens for people, and that's how I do it. Just close together in a line, laying on the ground, right on dirt, no mulch around it. Super easy. Good question. Here we go. The most common one that comes out of that is called a stinkhorn.
That orange?
Yeah, and
It's not very attractive.
it's like a little, it looks like an egg underneath before it opens up and comes out. Yeah. It's just, the smell of that to me is just not appealing, and so people claim you can eat those.
Oh, really? I'd be so scared.
Oh, pass. This to me is my preference. You want another one? Most apartment dwellers have friends that have yours. Not super easy because this thing, in effect, if it wants to be moist, And so if you don't have an outdoor place to do it, it's a little tricky.
Yeah, that's
Yeah. However, if you buy, you can get a kit basically that amounts to a block of sawdust, and you poke holes in it, and then the mushrooms come out the side, and you get 2 or 3 harvests, and it's a novelty, and it's kind of fun. So you can do things. Another thing I'd be willing to bet you could try is get a 5-gallon bucket, and then stand a log in it so you've got a source of moisture around it.
At all times?
Not like in water, but just soil. Treat it like a house plant. I would be willing to bet something like that could work potentially. Although I think because of the temperature range of the house, the currents of inside, it might be difficult if they want to have a change in temperature to get a fruiting. So it might be a little tricky if you have constant temperature in the house.
What about the balcony?
In a bucket on a balcony would probably be better, but it's pretty exposed, high up, and a lot of wind and stuff too. And so they want to be more. It really does work great. Like silk is just getting dark and protected under a tree. The tree, I mean, that's where they grow best, is in like shady places in the woods. So, I mean, even in a balcony, look, I mean, blazing sun on a balcony for half the day. Anywhere. I mean, that's not balconies proper, but just up the complex.
On the floor, so there's a wall protected.
I've never done it, so I'm not saying it's impossible, but I am just going to venture to guess that you'd be better to find somebody with a yard and just put it on the ground where somebody has a yard. Now, in this particular case, I'm just going to jump this little bit back in here and start the rest of this tomorrow, and not only that, but yeah. So, who has a place to actually grow a mushroom log right now? Couple, anybody else? You know? Apartment balcony, no, too good. Okay, so the folks that have places to grow mushroom logs, I'm giving this one away. So get over here, and what we're going to do,
paper, scissors.
Something. Let's figure out a way between you all to figure out who gets this. So I don't have any clever. Anybody have paper? We can write names and then draw a little something. Yeah, excellent. We've got a page out of the back of that. So everybody put their name on there, a little piece of paper.
How many do we have?
Are you guys together?
Yeah.
That's nice. So you're one. No take chances. Okay. What? 1, 2, 3, 4. Anybody else? No. Okay. Just see if I have a pen. What's that?
Come on.
Actually, yeah. Sorry, come on over here. Put yourself in. Okay. So little name.
Yeah.
Yeah, and in fact, actually, a deck works great because it keeps the sun off, but the water goes through. Yeah, so that works surprisingly well. Okay, so should I? Pull them up, just gonna make them look a little. I'm gonna
Stick them in your hat.
stick them in my hand. Okay, who's gonna draw our lucky?
Put them in your hat.
We have somebody who has
Or not.
Participating, so I can draw.
There you go.
Give them all of them.
Okay, so pick one.
I didn't see
Choose
anybody.
well. Had
One
one.
for a little one? Okay, there you go. Okay, so let's see who the little one is. Not you.
Are you the person with OCD?
Okay, and Steve. Hoorah! Okay. Good deal.
My dreams come true.
Okay, excellent. So, this actually will probably in the fall do its first mushroom. It takes a couple months.
Such a good place.
And if by some chance it doesn't work right away in the fall, then it is spring.
I have a photo of your bags.
Ah, perfect.
I have the
Okay,
digital
excellent.
version of
Perfect.
your business
You have my
card.
digital me. Excellent. Reach out to me
I will.
via the phone number. I'll email you the growing guide, which tells you more about how to take care of it and stuff like that. Yeah. So
Want to give her the variety?
it's already.
Oh, yeah.
I've got it labeled and everything. Yeah,
Would your bag say cheese, please?
and by the way, in case you lose the photo, my phone number is on the log.
I think this is a better prize than like an Academy Award. I'd like to thank my mother.
Awesome.
I have mine on trees.
Lay it down. Actually, I found it's better laying on the ground.
I'm gonna clear out mold at a perfect spot. Is it okay sort of next to a chain link fence if I move it away from the
I have a lot of just laying on the ground as dense a shade as possible. I've done a bunch. We stood a bunch up in bamboo like so, dig it into the ground so it can draw water through the end. But I've had the best fruiting by far laying down on the ground with the whole thing touching. It's so fun.
Thank you so much. I'm sorry.
I want to get a photo or two of our proud new mother. Okay, can I get you to look over here for 1 second? 1, 2, 3. Excellent. Before you go, can you just give me like your name and phone number and email address so I can reach out to you and send you a copy of that?
Got it right.
Stay in touch. If anybody is interested, I only brought 3, but if you want to buy any logs, actually we do have them available. So if folks are interested in ones that we know are going to work because they already are, anybody? A lot of folks are like, where do I put it? 25. If you try and buy these online, for one, half the size, it's about 30 plus shipping, plus it's brand new, so you have to wait a year. So it's a lot more money if you try and buy them online. Plus, again, it's not ready to fruit, so it takes a lot longer.
You came here and I told you about my kale plant. You may not remember. It was like it had lots of eggs.
White fly?
The white fly, and he was driving me